have a confession. I committed an unpardonable sin against my daughter. I once read her diary. I know. I journal my own deepest thoughts, and in every new journal I write, "You found my journal. Do not look inside. I would consider this grounds for divorce. P.S. I'll know." And I do consider someone reading my thoughts to be a violation of the highest degree, even though there are entries that are just pages full of the F word. So that day, the diary reading day, I don't know what I was thinking. I was cleaning up and putting something away in her drawer, and I saw the diary there. On the cover were the words in black Sharpie, "Keep out, Mom, Dad, Sean, !" with the crudely drawn skull and crossbones beneath. I stood there for a minute contemplating its secrets. She was in the middle of 5th grade, and things began to change between us. This was the year she began her letting go, much too early for me. This was the year when secrets started and never mind, you don't understand. The year when one day we would have a lot of fun playing together, and then the next day she was requesting I get out of her room. It was the year when I realized my baby girl was not my possession, and she wasn't a baby. She didn't belong to me in the way that I imagined that she once did. She was such a part of my everyday, and then suddenly, like everyone told me, she wasn't. My nickname for her at the time was Baby D, which was short for baby doll, and probably how I was treating her. I think that's why I wanted to read it. I wanted to know what was going on with her now. What was I doing wrong? What could I do better? And how was she misinterpreting my good intentions? My own mother was never really there for me. Her problems always outshadowed anything that was going on in my life, teaching me to just plow through and get over it. Her life was hard, and her choices always made it harder. I vowed to never be a parent like her. I would be the mother to my children that I wish that she were to me. I would listen and be kind and be there. Wasn't ever really sure what to do. Sadly, what my mother taught me was what not to do, leaving me feeling that I was constantly messing it up. Trying to justify my crime, I reasoned that we would both benefit from my knowing and be better for it. I picked up the book, and even though it was just the dog and I home that day, I locked myself in the bathroom to do the deed. So great was my guilt that I imagined that if the dog saw, he would somehow tell her with a look. Behind closed doors, I easily opened the flimsy lock with a metal nail file. As I turned the cover page, I knew there was no going back. On a Tuesday, she was upset at being snubbed by her friend at recess. Jessica told her to quit hanging around her and go find someone else to play with. On a Friday, Mariah thinks she's all that because she's going out with Trevor. Going out in 5th grade? What would that mean? I would pry that out of her later. Apparently, Mariah wasn't popular until Trevor started paying attention to her, but now she was the most popular girl in the class and treating everyone rudely. Women can be awful sometimes, even in 5th grade. What broke my heart was finding out she liked a boy. She talked about how nervous she was when she found out that he liked her too. He gave her a necklace for a Valentine, and she said she felt like the sun was shining in her. She actually wrote those words. This was the only entry in the whole diary that mentioned me. She said she threw the bag it came in away, a brown lunch sack with hearts drawn all over it. so my mom won't know. That was it, the only mom in there. When he broke up with her a few entries later, he didn't even tell her directly, but had her friend, who he now liked, tell her. Men can be awful sometimes, even in 5th grade. She said she never wanted to go to school again. Was that the day her stomach hurt so much? Other entries detailed her complex feelings as she navigated that space where innocence ends. When I closed the book, all I could think was my poor baby. So many emotions for such a young girl. I was glad she was able to express those feelings, even though they weren't shared with me. Reading her thoughts that day was a big reality check. My emotional life at the time revolved around my relationship with my kids. But with all that was going on in their young lives, how could I think that theirs would revolve around their relationship with me? I naively expected to see entries that expressed how much an angry exchange we had one morning ruined her day, or how excited she was when I made heart-shaped pancakes for Valentine breakfast. But I guess those were my feelings. What I really hoped to see was some evidence that I wasn't totally blowing this mother thing. And maybe the lack of my presence on the pages was just that. I don't know. I locked the diary and carefully placed it back in the drawer exactly as I found it. I realized the pages had replaced a big part of our relationship. They would listen with no reply, no questions, no advice, and no judgment. To ease my conscience that day, I called a friend and told her. "Who wouldn't?" was her reply. But what did she know? She had 2 boys. She had no idea of the fragile bond, sometimes like a glass thread, that holds mother and daughter together. Since that day, I've imagined many times how I would confess this sin and apologize, freeing myself from all the guilt. She would be mad but understand, and then we would laugh about how ridiculous 5th graders going out was. She would tell me I did all right as a mom, and then would apologize for being distant sometimes. We would finish our chat fest over big bowls of ice cream. I've also imagined, though, that I would be convicted in court for the seriousness of the violation. Before reading my sentence, the judge would ask if I were remorseful, and I was. He would make me promise to never do it again, and I haven't. He would ask if I learned a lesson, and I did. The day I read her diary, I learned to be more understanding of a young girl who processes her life so differently than I do mine. I also learned letting go is a process. The judge would then order me to quit trying to prove to my daughter, but mostly to myself, that I was not my mother. And my daughter is here, and now she knows.